There is a place on Earth that you believe you know completely. You see it in photos, read about it in books, imagine scenes of endless sand under a relentless sun. But what you see is merely a momentary illusion of one of the most dynamic and transformative scenarios that the planet has ever created. Welcome to the Sahara, and prepare yourself, because everything you have learned about it may be completely wrong. For centuries, the Sahara was portrayed as an eternal desert, a land dead since the beginning of time. But when you begin to look at what really exists beneath that sand, the story changes completely. And this change begins with a simple question. If the Sahara is so empty and so dead, why is it filled with bones of giant whales? 40 million years ago, the place where you see golden dunes was an ocean. Not a lake, not a river, an ocean. The Tethys Ocean. A warm and shallow body of water, pulsing with life, where marine creatures like the Basilosaurus, a predator 18 meters long that seemed straight out of a nightmare, dominated the waters like sharks in a horror film. And when you walk today through the Valley of the Whales, in Egypt, you're not walking through a desert. You're walking over a fossilized submarine cemetery. Enormous skulls emerge from the sand. Long ribs like tree trunks surface like bones of a shipwreck. Gigantic vertebrae stretch for hundreds of meters. All of this is there, preserved by time, like a security camera from 40 million years showing what this place was before. But the story does not end with ancient oceans, because 10,000 years ago, let that sink in, just 10,000 years ago, the Sahara was green, completely green. You would walk through savannas that extended to the horizon. Wide rivers would cut across the landscape. Immense lakes would reflect the sky. And instead of sand, you would see herds of giraffes, elephants and hippopotamuses circulating freely. This is not science fiction. It is not myth. The rock paintings on the rock walls of the Tassili Plateau prove it. Giraffes, elephants navigating in boats. Images carved in rock that would be impossible if that region had always been an extreme desert. What caused this radical transformation? A silent mechanism that operates above our heads in the almost imperceptible movement of the Earth itself. The planet does not rotate in a perfectly stable manner. It sways slightly over thousands of years in a cycle that alters the African monsoons. When this tilt favors the continent, tropical rains advance over the Sahara, the dunes disappear, rivers are born, life flourishes. And when the cycle changes, everything recedes, the rains dry up, the vegetation dies, the green is replaced by dust. It is a cosmic rhythm that humanity can barely understand, but that rewrites continents. But here is what is really disturbing. It was not always like this. Because between that ancient ocean and that green savanna, something existed that defied all logic of human survival. Entire civilizations built empires in the heart of this desert. The Garamantes organized cities with planned streets, fortresses, structured agriculture, everything hidden under the sand until modern satellites revealed more than 100 buried settlements. And you might be wondering, how? How does a civilization thrive without water in a desert? The answer lies beneath the sand. Foggaras. Underground tunnels dug manually, in some cases for kilometers, capturing water from deep aquifers and transporting it by gravity to cultivated fields. It was pure engineering, persistent human effort against overwhelming odds. And it worked. For centuries, these tunnels kept vineyards, crops, and entire communities alive. But there was a secret that made this possible and extraordinarily fragile. The water that fed those cities was not renewed by rain. It was fossil water. Water accumulated during wetter periods of the past, stored underground for thousands of years. In other words, the Garamantes were consuming the geological past of the planet to sustain their present. Over time, water levels fell beyond what the technology of the era could reach. The tunnels needed to be dug deeper. The routes became longer, maintenance became impossible, and the cities were abandoned. They disappeared, leaving only invisible traces that only modern technology could see. But that was centuries ago. What is happening now is on an exponentially larger scale. When geologists began drilling into the subsurface of Libya in the 20th century, they expected to find petroleum. What they found changed everything. Fresh water, crystal clear, abundant. An aquifer so vast that it defies all rational intelligence. The Nubian aquifer, a reservoir of 2,500,000 cubic kilometers of water. To give you a sense of scale, that would be enough to feed billions of people for millennia. This water was infiltrated into the soil millions of years ago, during phases when the Sahara was green and received intense tropical rains. It is fossil water, a climate time capsule trapped beneath the modern desert. And in the 1980s, a visionary leader, or dangerously naive, depending on your perspective, initiated a monumental project: the Great Man-Made River. Pipelines so large that a truck could pass through them, miles and miles of underground infrastructure bringing water to coastal cities. Arid areas began to produce food, cities grew. Millions of people began to depend on a resource that seemed finally to tame the logic of the desert. But there is a detail that changes everything. This aquifer practically does not recharge under today's climatic conditions. Each liter extracted is part of a reserve accumulated in another climatic chapter of the Earth. We are consuming the geological past of the planet on a continental scale, repeating exactly what the Garamantes did 2,000 years ago, but with much more powerful technology. The question that remains: for how long? But the Sahara guards even more disturbing secrets. Because before any human empire existed, before any whale swam in its ancient waters, something happened that transformed sand into glass. Literally. In 1922, when archaeologists opened the tomb of Tutankhamun, they found gold, jewels, symbols of eternal power. But there was something small that caught attention decades later. A scarab carved in a translucent yellow stone, so pure that it seemed molded in a laboratory. Modern chemical analyses revealed something shocking. It was glass from the Libyan desert. This glass is not common. To transform sand into crystals so pure, you need to heat it to temperatures close to 2,000 degrees Celsius, something far beyond what natural fires or volcanoes could produce. And this material is spread across hundreds of square kilometers in the Sahara, as if an immense force had melted the entire surface in a matter of seconds. For years, researchers searched for a giant crater. They imagined a direct meteorite impact. Nothing was found. But when physicists modeled scenarios in supercomputers, the answer emerged. About 29 million years ago, an asteroid entered Earth's atmosphere over North Africa. But it did not touch the ground. Before reaching the soil, it exploded in the air. Airburst, an aerial explosion that released a wave of heat so intense that it melted the surface of the ground without leaving a visible crater. Imagine the sky illuminating like a second sun for a few moments, the sand below transforming instantly into incandescent liquid, and then solidifying again in the form of glass. Yellow fragments scattered across the desert, silent witnesses to a cosmic event that occurred long before any human existed. Thousands of years later, someone found these fragments glinting under the Sahara sun and decided to transform them into a symbol of power, carrying literally on the chest a reminder of an impact coming from space. When you put it all together, ancient oceans, lost savannas, buried empires, fossil water that has an expiration date, explosions coming from the sky, the Sahara ceases to be an empty setting and transforms into an active archive of the planet's instability. Here is what is disturbing, while at the same time liberating. None of this is permanent. The Sahara is not fixed. The sand that you see today is merely one chapter of a story that has already changed many times and will continue to change long after our own cities cease to exist. Perhaps the greatest mistake we make is believing that what we see today is definitive, that the geography we consider normal is guaranteed. But the truth is much simpler and much more uncomfortable. We are merely living a specific phase of a system much larger and much older than any human civilization. The Sahara was ocean, then it was forest, then it was savanna, then it was home to bright cities, then it became desert, and one day, perhaps it will become something completely different. Because if an ocean can become a desert and a desert can become a savanna, then the true mystery is not what the Sahara was. It is what it can still become, and that is the greatest secret of the desert. It is not buried under the sand. It is in the way it forces us to see that nothing on earth is really permanent, not even us.